When we think about prayer, most of us probably have a pretty specific idea of what that looks like. But what if there's a more powerful way to do it? What if there's a lost mode of prayer, one that ancient traditions knew all about, that has been almost completely forgotten by the modern world? I mean, just think about it. What if ancient traditions, from dusty scrolls to the stories passed down through generations, all point to this incredibly powerful way of communicating with the universe, a way that just isn't taught in the modern Western world, a way that could literally change everything? Let's dig into what we know so we can really understand what we might have lost. All right, so to figure out what's been lost, we've got to start with what we already know. So let's do a quick rundown of the kinds of prayer that we're all pretty familiar with. In the West, researchers have actually managed to categorize prayer into 4 main types. And look, every way of praying is totally valid, but these are the big ones we typically practice. And here they are: colloquial, ritualistic, petitionary, and meditative. These are the modes that Western science has officially put a label on, and I bet you're going to recognize yourself in at least one of them. Okay, first up is colloquial prayer. This is that super informal, in-the-moment chat you have with the universe. You know the one. When your gaslight is on, you're in the middle of nowhere, and you're just whispering, "Oh, please, please, just let me make it to the next exit." Yeah, that's colloquial prayer. Then we've got ritualistic prayer. Now, the word ritual might sound all ancient and mysterious, but really, our lives are packed with them. Saying grace before a meal, that classic bedtime prayer you've said since you were a kid, yep, those are rituals. Next is petitionary prayer. This one's pretty straightforward. It's when we are literally petitioning or asking the powers that be for a specific outcome. Think of affirmations like, "I claim abundance now," or when we're directly asking for healing in our lives. And finally, there's meditative prayer. This one is different. There are generally no words involved at all. It's all about becoming aware of that presence that's in everything and realizing, hey, I'm a part of that. It's more of a state of being than an action. Okay, so we've got our 4 types, but here is where it gets really, really interesting. Because while those 4 categories cover a lot of ground, they don't cover everything. Ancient wisdom points to a 5th mode of prayer, one that just doesn't fit into any of those boxes. I mean, we're talking about hints found on temple walls in Egypt, in the oral traditions of indigenous peoples. They all reference a kind of prayer that might share some elements with the others, but is fundamentally different. It's like a lost art form. To really wrap our heads around this, there is no better way than through a story. So let's go back in time to the early 1990s, to the American desert Southwest. It was during a time of this tremendous, crippling drought. The story revolves around a man, we'll just call him David, whose people had lived on that land for generations. He was invited to a sacred place to pray for rain, and what he did there, well, it pulls back the curtain on this entire 5th mode of prayer. So after a brief, quiet moment at an ancient medicine wheel, David's friend asked him if he had prayed for rain. And he looked right at him and said, "No, because if we pray for rain, the rain can never happen." Whoa. Let that sink in. He explained that by asking for something, you are acknowledging its absence, which just reinforces the very condition you want to change. So this is the crucial point, right here, this distinction. Praying for rain is an act that basically confirms its absence. But this loss mode is about praying from the perspective of rain, an act of creation that embodies the reality you want, as if it's already happened. So what did he do instead? David said he engaged all of his senses. He felt the thick mud oozing between his toes. He could smell the rain on the dry earth. He felt what it was like to run through chest-high corn. He didn't ask for rain. He became the feeling of rain. You know, a Tibetan holy man once said, "The feeling is the prayer." And the result? Get this. That evening, after years of drought, these big black clouds just rolled in. A totally bizarre, anomalous weather pattern dipped down into that one specific area of northern New Mexico and just dumped torrential, flooding rains. The correlation was so high, it was impossible to deny. Now, this story isn't just a cool anecdote. It is a perfect example of an ancient formula. In fact, ancient texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls actually left us precise instructions for how this power works. A 2,500-year-old text from the Essenes tells us that when 3 specific parts of ourselves become one, we gain the power to literally command our reality. And they weren't speaking in metaphors here. This was meant to be taken literally. The text describes three dwellings inside of us. First, there's thought. Think of thought as the blueprint, the direction. On its own, it has very little power. Second is emotion, which comes from the body. This is the fuel, the raw energy. And finally, there is feeling. This is the powerful union of thought and emotion, and is created in the heart. And this brilliantly illustrates why things like affirmations can sometimes fall flat. You can repeat the thought, my perfect partner is manifesting for me now, a million times. But if your underlying emotion is, who would ever want to be with me? You're completely sabotaging the prayer. The thought is just an empty wish without the fuel of a matching emotion. That union of thought and emotion creates a coherent feeling in the heart. That feeling becomes your belief. And that belief is the nonverbal language that speaks to the field of energy connecting all things, what some might call the mind of God or the quantum hologram. So how do we actually do this? What is the specific quality of feeling that allows us to speak this powerful, creative language from the heart? Well, the key is to generate feelings of appreciation, gratitude, compassion, and love. We have to become, in our hearts, the very things we choose to experience in our world. And look, these aren't new ideas. These are the core principles taught by masters like Buddha and Jesus. They were inviting us to change our inner world, to change our outer world. And that leaves us with a final, powerful question to consider. If you truly understood that you have an internal technology, thought, emotion, and feeling that allows you to directly access the fundamental forces responsible for building our entire universe, how differently would you live your life?